So hello everyone, this is my presentation, Voices from Bondage, Adira Walker, Professor Mondragon, U.S. History, 1877. Just thank you for watching and I hope you enjoy. So my introduction, just before we get into the primary source analysis, is America was transformed by the Cotton Revolution in the 1830s. Cotton production directly tied to global markets in Europe, which made the South wealthy. Cotton became one of the most important U.S. exports in 1860 and is accounted for 60% of all exports. So this is really crazy. You could see that it was really needed. Another statistic, enslaved population grew from 50,000 in 1790 to nearly 4 million by 1860, known as the Black Belt. So slavery was known as a modern capitalist institution as well. So all these things, this is just kind of, you can see a little introduction of it, and now we're going to get into the primary sources. So for my first primary source, I decided to pick Solomon Northup. And so basically, he was a free black man who was captured and basically kidnapped and sold into slavery in New York. He writes an account of his 12 years as a slave. I know a lot of us have heard the 12 Years as a Slave movie, but this is his first written account. The three key points from his excerpt is dehumanization, people treated as assets to be inspected and sold, separation of family, children were separated from their family into horrible conditions, and they were publicly torn apart. Violence, physical violence was used to invoke fear and force obedience. So these are the three quotes that I picked from the primary source analysis, and I just thought these really wrapped everything together, and it just showed the raw emotion of how he felt and just what he's seen. So sometimes a man or woman was taken back to the small house and yard, stripped and inspected more minutely. Scars upon a slave's back were considered evidence of a rebellious or unruly spirit and hurt his sale. So he's just talking about the embarrassment they felt. It's just like they're publicly they're doing this, they're taking it in private and really just inspecting them. Like there's no privacy, there's no nothing. And if they got lashes, they seen that as a negative thing because they're being rebellious and they're not being a good enslaved person. Second one, she wanted to be with her children, she said. The little time she had to live, over and over again, she told them how she loved her boy. The bargain was agreed upon, and Randall must go alone. Then Eliza ran to him, embraced him passionately, kissed him again and again, and told him to remember her all the while her tears would fall in the boy's face like rain. Just using this imagery is just very important because, you know, we could see the raw emotion that this was intentional. They split up families, they split up mother and son, and they will not ever see them again. It's like a very small likelihood that they will. So this just really gave it to the enslaved woman perspective of having their children being ripped away from them. So the third quote, enslaved people were considered property first, human beings second, and the market treated them as commodities, and family ties were secondary to financial gain. So this just points out they were considered property first, human beings second. I really would say that they weren't even considered human, but the market treated them as commodities, and family ties that were secondary to financial gain. So this just shows the corruptness of it all. So for my second primary source analysis, I chose Frederick Douglass. And basically, Frederick Douglass was born into slavery. He escaped to freedom and became an abolitionist activist. And he exposes how slavery destroys the enslaved person on the inside and on the outside. So three key points to highlight was violence. They used violence as control. Whippings were expected, normalized, and brutal. Number two, there was no education. Enslaved people were denied education. They didn't even see them as human. So being literate as a slave was seen as dangerous to the slaveholders. 3, religion hypocrisy. The enslaved Christian religion contradicts the Christian values. So it's just very contradictory in every aspect. So the 3 quotes that I picked were, I thought it also tied everything well together and just, you felt the raw emotion of it all. So by far the largest part of the slaves known as little of their ages as horses. By far the large part of the slaves know as little as of their ages as horses know of theirs, and it is wish of most masters within my knowledge to keep their slaves thus ignorant. So Frederick is just talking about how he wanted to know his age when he was, you know what I mean, when he was younger. So they left that, and it's like they're comparing them to horses in a way. So it's really bad. A want of information concerning my own was a source of unhappiness to me even during childhood. The right children could tell their ages. I could not tell why I ought to be deprived of the same privilege. I was not allowed to make any inquiries of my master concerning it. He deemed all these such inquiries of the part of a slave improper and impertinent and evidence of a restless spirit. So just as a child, he's looking at this and he's like, okay, I want to know my age. These white children know. What's the difference between me and them? So you can really show, even from a children's perspective, it's very sad, and they don't even understand what's going on and why they can't know. So the third quote I put, it is a common custom in the part of Maryland from which I ran away to part children from their mothers at very early age. I chose this quote because it also backs up the Solomon's quote with, separating children, and it's just, it was a normal thing to separate the children from the mothers, and I just think that's horrific. So comparison and historical themes. For these comparison and historical themes, I seen the violence and physical control, family and separation, education, knowledge equals power. So just highlighting that Northup highlights the public physical abuse, Douglas highlights the private and systemic violence, like example for the lack of literacy, family and separation, families being divided at auctions. So he highlights on those, and Douglas highlights the children removed from their mothers like he was. And so the comparison, slavery destroyed the family dynamic to force obedience. These overlap by sharing the same expectations, human cost. So yeah, it's very insane. Education, knowledge equals power. Northup, less explicit. Douglas, he offers more explicit. And the comparison, the mental dimension of control, which complements Northup's passage, which focus on material physical control. So these are all very important. It's just kind of crazy because all of it, they had different experiences, but it was really all negative, and it wasn't, there's nothing they could say positive about the enslavers. To really dig into this, it's just, when I was reading these two, I really chose them because I did feel like they complemented each other, and just the focus on that family aspect. And just looking back, even at the readings of this week, they did all this to tear this apart, yet they still found community, which is pretty inspiring in my opinion. So yes. And then here is my annotated bibliography. Well, not annotated just a regular bibliography. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.